So now that we know what props are, let's make our lives a little bit easier when working with props in practice. So, as we already know, each time that we pass some props into a component, that component will then automatically receive this object of props, which will contain all the props that we passed in. And actually, all components receive this props object. So even here in footer, where we don't pass any props in, we can define that and we can log it to the console. So it will be empty then. So let's see. Yeah, so it is empty, but it always exists. All right, so that just as a side note here. So what we want to do now is to avoid having to write this props dot whatever else all the time in our component. So wouldn't it be nice to directly receive this pizza object here into the component instead of just this props? Well, we can actually do that with destructuring. And again, if destructuring is a strange concept to you, then please go back to the previous review section. But anyway, now here, instead of directly receiving these props, we can immediately destructure them. And so here we can write pizza object, which needs to match exactly the name of the prop that's being passed in. So this one here. And then from there on, all of these props here can go. So I will select them all here, one after the other, which I'm doing using the select next occurrence. So that's this shortcut right here. So you can just go ahead and use the shortcut that you see right here for you. So let's get rid of that. And this will now create a small problem, which is that here we are still trying to log to the console these props. But the props object now no longer exists because, well, we immediately destructured it right here. So now if we wanted to take a look at what we receive, we would have to do it like this. But the props object itself no longer exists. But this is really, really nice because right now, all we have to do is to look at this line right here in order to know which props this component will actually receive. So before this, all we had was the generic props. And then if we wanted to know what kind of props we will receive here eventually, we would have to go to the place where the props are actually passed in. But now, not anymore. So now, right here in this component definition, we can immediately see that we will receive a pizza object. And so that's the second really big advantage of immediately destructuring props. So let's do the same down here. So again, not props, but exactly the name of the prop that we pass in. So close our, and then here we can get rid of that. And of course, if we were passing in multiple props, and let's try that. So let's also pass in the open hour. And then here open hour. And so here all we have to do is to add open hour then. So here let's say we're open from, then open hour to this. Yep, and that worked just fine. Now we can actually really define anything we want here. Let's write test. Let's add that here, for example, and this will then simply be nothing. So if we try to destructure a property here that doesn't exist, it's simply undefined, right? So let's get rid of that here. But this was just to show you. So from now on, for the rest of the course, we will always receive props like this here. Just make sure to never ever forget the curly braces, because then, of course, everything will break. So that's a common beginner mistake. So yeah, you have been warned. Never forget that, because only with the curly braces we are actually destructuring.